At this time, I'm going to call to order the special session of the governing body of the City of Lampasas. The first item this evening is to administer the oath of office to newly elected mayor and council members. Thank you, sir. Right here. Is that it, Becky? Okay. At this time, we will have a presentation to outgoing mayor and city council member. Before you give us any goodies, Becky, I think both of us want to say something, if that's all right.
Okay, I'm first. Mine will not be as eloquent, I'm sure, as the mayor's, and I did write it down just so I could get everything out. Okay, this is a bittersweet time for me. One sentence. Okay. Okay. Oh, gosh.
I was good. When I was elected on council, I wasn't sure what to expect. It's been such a privilege and honor to be a part for making decisions for the betterment of the community. I have enjoyed the past 4 years and will always treasure this part of my life. This wasn't supposed to happen. Thank you to my fellow council members. I have enjoyed working with you and making decisions with you. Thank you to all the department heads and all of their crews who have answered my texts, my phone calls, my questions. Ricky Roy, Chief Bailey and the police department, Chief Jeff Smith and the fire department, all the ladies in City Hall. Thank you to Becky for all of her organization, knowledge, and help. She rocks. Finley. Obviously, I care about him. You are amazing, and it has truly been an honor to work with you. Thank you for all you do for our staff, our community, us as council. We are so lucky to have you as our city manager. If you don't know Finley and you don't know his heart, he truly has the community of Lampasas as the best interest. You may not see his face out and about very often, but his heart and his time and his effort every day is spent to try to better the city of Lampasas. I would not be able to do this position justice if I stayed. I need to be there for my boys and be a mom. They are getting busier, ages 14 and 12, so I need to be a mom and be there for them. But thank you for everybody from the bottom of my heart. I wish you all the best. And thank you, citizens of Lampasas.
Seven years ago, I joined council as a 38-year-old mom, motivated only to do the best I could for Lampasas, and that has been my only motivating factor ever since. I had only my morals, ethics, and love for this community as my compass. When assuming this role, I did so knowing I would never be able to make everyone happy and that the critics would always be louder than the supporters. But words can only hurt you if you choose to let them, and doubt never served a decision maker well. As I spent time reflecting in the last few days, I'm happy to say that for some reason, all the negative seems to have taken a back seat in the memory department, and I have a positive and wonderful experience to hold on to. To staff, you are and will continue to be the backbone of Lampasas. Those who take you for granted, those who don't comprehend what you do, and those that criticize like it is their job, they don't matter. As a 7-year witness to the dedication every one of you is to your job, your loyalty and your desire to keep us going has been inspiring. So much of the things that we all take for granted, our safety, our streets, our electric, our water and parks, they are made possible by the 100+ neighbors who work for the city of Lampasas. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you. To my fellow council members, past and present, I applaud your willingness to serve, to often sit in a very hot seat, to spend countless hours working for Lampasas with no reward except knowing whether acknowledged or not, you are making a difference. I will miss you all. To Finley, the man, the myth, the legend, and the reason I decided to run for mayor. I spent days trying to come up with words and only found tears. I knew I wanted to work alongside you in this role when I realized that my passion for this community was matched only by your love for the nerdy side of this business. A work relationship became a friendship that challenged me and made me a better human. I am eternally grateful for who you are and what you are to me. To the cowardly keyboard warriors and those who have never met me, The council or the staff that you criticize, thank you too. For reminding me why it was important to work tirelessly to keep Lampasas together, no matter the issue we face, because it is so very important that we never let our circumstances and choices turn us into miserable and hateful souls also. Lampasas is a wonderful place full of wonderful people, and it will stay that way. Just watch. To my family and friends, especially my husband John and my daughter Taylor, let it be officially known that I would be lost without you. You have sacrificed so much and been so patient with all of the things that came my way. Thank you for believing in me when I didn't believe in anything. I love you all more than you can ever know. This last year has been difficult and unfair. It has been that. It has exhausted my patience and tested my faith. But I believe we all came out on the other side a better community. If I could make any request of all of you going forward, it would be that you slow down, love and appreciate anything and everything and everyone around you. And now it's time for me to do that exact same thing. Mayor Misty, signing out.
The proclamation? Okay. I do, so everyone tell me if you can hear me. It's a proclamation to recognize and honor an outstanding citizen in our community. Mayor Misty Talbert created the Community Champion Recognition Program in June 2017. As a small token of our appreciation, we would like to take this opportunity to rename the recognition program the Misty Talbert Community Champion Award. Whereas, to honor anyone or any organization in the community for their leadership, volunteer work, community involvement, and their willingness to support and improve the quality of life for our community as a whole. Whereas honoring a community champion creates an example for the rest of the community to follow, emphasize that community service is important and shows that one person or organization can be an effective agent for change. And whereas honoring a community champion makes not only that person, but others engaged in community service feel that they and their hard work and contributions are valued and appreciated. And whereas honoring a community champion shows that the community who real heroes are someone who strives mightily and selflessly towards a goal that benefits many rather than himself and is committed to making things better for everyone. Now therefore, I, T.J. Monroe, Mayor of the City of Lampasas, on behalf of the Lampasas City Council, by power of this proclamation, honor our ambassadors, volunteers, and those who strive to make our community a better place for the citizens of Lampasas, Texas, to live and take pride in, and declare them to be a Misty Talbert Community Champion. The City Council acknowledges and sincerely appreciates the dedication, service, and selfless efforts. In witness thereof, I have hereunto set my hand and call for the seal of the City of Lampasas to be affixed this 24th day of May, 2021. you change around? I'll just stay here for the time being. It's easier. Yeah, I'm here. Almost goes here. Sorry. Right here. We'll rearrange later. How's that? Are we ready for the municipal judge? At this point, we're going to discuss and possible action concerning the reappointment of a municipal judge and the administer the oath of office. Do we have any nominations?
I nominate Robert Gradell.
Any other nominations?
Second.
A motion? All in favor? Say aye.
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 All opposed? Judge?
Oh, okay.
The next item on the agenda is discussion and possible action concerning the appointment of a mayor pro tem for the 21-22 term. Do we have any nominations?
Yes, ma'am. I would like to nominate Chuck Williamson.
Are
I
there-
would second that.
Other nominations? No? Take a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Chuck? At this point, we can adjourn the special session. Motion to do so.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We'll now call to order the workshop session. First item on the agenda is discussion and updates related to COVID-19 pandemic. Chief Smith? Thank you.
Oh, I thought they could hear me. I continue to have good news as far as COVID-19 cases. Currently, State of Texas, we have 47,305 active cases. As of Friday, May 21st, we had 3 active cases here in Lampasas County. I don't think we're getting any updates tonight while we're in council because I actually have Dr. Hay back here behind me, so I don't have to worry about that. As far as the total cases in the state of Texas that are hospitalized, we have 2,037 patients. Lampasas County has 1, so we're doing well. As of last Monday, there were 3,353 completely vaccinated residents in the zip code of 76550. This is up 400 from the last time that we spoke. So in a 2-week period, we've gone up 400 completely vaccinated people in the zip code just for Lampasas, not the county. So we're doing well as that also. And the last thing that I have, if it would please the council, I'd like to have Dr. Hay come up here and make a small little presentation to her. She is leaving, as we've discussed, at the end of May. She will no longer be the public health official for the county of Lampasas, and I asked her to be here tonight so that we could recognize her and thank her properly for her commitment to the citizens of Lampasas City.
Right.
Dr. Hay? Do y'all have any other questions as far as it relates to COVID from me? Thank you again, and I can't tell you enough how much I enjoyed working with Dr. Hay. It was great and made things a lot easier for me.
Thank you. Next item is discussion regarding the draft Livestock and Fowl Ordinance in the city limits of Lampasas.
Mayor, Council, we've tried to provide you with a good outline draft during the last few council meetings to go over. The draft that you see before you is not a refined draft. This is just a draft that we put together. We have to have a starting point, so that's what this is. The very beginning of it, you'll see that we went over numerous different definitions, because once you start talking about livestock, then you're talking about barn animals and then different types of animals with that, different type of livestock animals. We talked about grandfathered animals. We've had discussions with several citizens about grandfathered animals. And so in the ordinance, we put that this would be effective January 1, 2022 to be permitted. And I'm moving everything here. To be permitted and or have a waiver and exception at that time. We also define public nuisance in regards to livestock in this, so that some of the other things are included in the public nuisance ordinance with this, which would include the enclosures, would also include making sure things stay clean for the health and safety so that we don't have flies and mosquitoes with that or infestation of fleas. We also talked about unsanitary conditions, being that enclosures or the immediate area where animals are kept or harbored would need to be kept clean, and that if they're not within a 72-hour period, then that would be prima facie evidence that this is not a clean enclosure. We also talked about responsibility and powers of police officers in Section 10-146 of our Animal Control Division. I'm sorry I said police, but of our Animal Control Division, Animal Shelter, and peace officers that would give them authority to, if someone tried to interfere or hinder with their discharge of their duties, and also if they failed to obey an order by the animal control officer. And then entry on premises, with that, it pertains to the permit. If we were to issue a permit and they did not allow an animal control officer to come on the premise in regards to the animal or their enclosure, that the animal control officer would have to seek court authorization to enter, but it could terminate their permit that they have. We talked about abandoned animals because that tends to happen once we start talking to someone about their animals. If they don't take it to the shelter, then we'll find it abandoned at a later time. So we included abandoned animals in this. Also, running at large so that animals aren't just set free and running at large. 1050 is really where, Section 1050, keeping of animals, is where you'll see a lot of what this ordinance is about. And it talks about the density of animals, and it talks about enclosures and how close that they can be to property. And that's on page 16, or page 9 of the ordinance, page 16 in your packet of keeping of animals. We went into quite a bit of detail with the animals and with the enclosure. We also followed House Bill 1686 that was approved through legislature, and it talks about that residential lot can have 6 rabbits or 6 fowl and a combination of 8. So when we discussed and talked about density, we added that we'll have 8. That way we don't have to try to make sure that we aren't in violation of legislature. We also we found a couple little mistakes that we've made in here that we're going to correct when we refine this, where we changed it from 6 animals to 8 animals. We talked about, we took a little bit of the old ordinance and added it to this also, because in the old ordinances, livestock, primarily we have the hitching and tying of animals. So we added a little bit in here about you can't tie an animal, livestock, to a public area. That away, like a sidewalk, it can't be on a sidewalk, or in a public street, public place. And I am making that thing do it again. You can't hitch it to a vehicle. And we also talked about, in the keeping of animals, that the animal must be fed, must be properly watered, and must also have proper medical care. On page 18 in your packet, you'll see that we talked about all poultry, fowl, urban fowl shall be properly penned and contained, and the containment area should be at least 20 feet. This comes from House Bill 1686. We had made that a little bit less, but then once we saw that in the House bill, we changed it. All rabbits and small animals shall be properly contained, and the containment area shall be at least 9 square feet per rabbit or small animal. That comes from House Bill 1686 also. And then animal density. The large animals on less than an acre, a cow, a horse, mule, we left that at 0 for less than 1 acre. And then for 1 acre, one animal unit. And then we show an example for 3 acres, and for each acre would be 1 animal unit. So for 3 acres would be 3 large animals, and for 5 acres would be 5 large animals. Then you get to the medium animals, and half an acre, we made that 1 animal unit. For medium animals is 8. So for half an acre it would be 4. For up to 1 acre, we changed it from a half an acre to up to 1 acre would be 4, and then 1 acre would be 8. And then again, we talk about offspring, and they are exempt until they're weaned. And then we talk about fowl, and we talk about rabbits as being 8 animals for 1 animal unit for those smaller animals. Roosters are prohibited, and then those offspring are exempted for 4 months. And your hens and your roosters are, after 4 months, they're not exempt anymore. They're considered part of the animal unit with that.
Chief Bailey, could I just ask a question at this moment?
Yes, ma'am.
No roosters at all in the city?
No roosters. They would be prohibited unless you tell us otherwise. Again, this is a draft, so unless you decide otherwise.
So
We
can-
receive complaints on roosters for the noise that they create, especially if there's more than one rooster.
Just curious, because there was something earlier about grandfathered animals.
Mm-hmm.
So would those rooster and swine be grandfathered
So
until they
if-
die?
If we grandfathered, then we would have to look at, how would we do that? Right now, the way that we wrote it is January 1, 2022, is they would have to be permitted and be, the prohibited animals would not be allowed within the city.
Okay, so I guess I misunderstood, because I read the grandfather thing a couple of times, and I wasn't 100% sure that if they were, because how I had read it is that they would be grandfathered if they applied for a permit by that point. But how it's really written is they would be grandfathered, but they have till that point to get rid of the prohibited animals.
They would have until January 1, 2022
Okay.
to become in compliance with this.
Okay,
So
thanks.
they would not be allowed to have their roosters after that time.
Okay, thank you.
Okay?
Chief, can I ask you something real quick?
Yes,
On that section 10-150,
yes.
see, under 2 there, I was reading, it says, single-family residential lots should be allowed to have no less than 6 fowl. Should that be no more than?
Single family should be allowed to have no less than, it should be more than, yes.
And then also, under number 15, where it's talking about poultry fowl and urban fowl, and the containment area shall be at least 20 square feet per fowl. You said that y'all are talking about doing less than 20 feet?
I'm sorry, which one?
On number 15,
Number 15.
on page 18.
All poultry, fowl, urban fowl shall be properly penned and contained. The containment area shall be at least 20 square feet per fowl.
And you said it will be 20 square feet?
That's what House Bill 1686 has in it. We can adjust that if y'all would like to see it adjusted.
Thank you.
Okay. Back over to animal units. A unit would be 8. There's a couple of spots in here where we didn't catch the 6, I believe, as we went back over it, and we'll have to change that. And then we put where the 3 and 5, just to show you that we talk about 1 animal unit per acre. And that can add up to quite a few animals with that. And then we talk about combination of animals will be allowed, but it depends on the unit of animals and the acreage. Again, we have to follow House Bill 1686 if everything passes with it, with that combination of 8 fowl, 8 rabbits in a single residential lot. Then we talk about offspring shall be exempt. We covered that. Methods of measuring distance. That's from the enclosure of the area where the animals contained to the nearest point of the actual residence of or building used for human habitation. A lot of times it's from property line to property line, and that makes it very difficult. But if you do it from what you're discussing, what's the issue to the habitation that has the concern with that, that makes it a lot easier for us. Slaughtering of animals. We discussed the rules for slaughtering of animals in a residential area and what they have to have for that in order to slaughter animals within the city limits. And this just pertains to residential, not your commercial with that. And then what they have to do with disposal of the carcass.
So
Disposable of animals and livestock, we've come into this issue a few times. Someone will have a horse die on their property or have a cow die on their property, and they don't have the means to have it taken care of properly. So we've helped several dispose of their large animals.
While we're talking about slaughtering, could I ask about deer? If someone has killed a deer for food, are they allowed to slaughter that? Well, I don't know the proper term. They
That
slaughter
deals with
that for food.
livestock, not with,
Not
I mean,
deer.
that deals with wildlife, I'm sorry, not with livestock ordinance.
Okay.
With that. Falls under Parks and Wildlife and how to, when you're hunting and taking care of that animal during your wildlife like that.
Chief, before we get too far away, under that 10-153, the animals prohibited, where it has swine down there. I know that there was folks out like in Sunrise Hills that have talked about a bunch of swine out
Pass
there.
that right up. I'm glad you mentioned it.
And so as of January 1st, 2022, those are gone.
Councilman Morris, that's correct. As of January 1, 2022, the animals that would be prohibited would be swine and any type of swine, roosters, and then any cockerel that's over 4 months, any guinea fowl, peafowl, or fighter fowl breeds. We have several fighter type breeds of roosters in the city limits, and any habitual public nuisance animal would be. And then we define public nuisance animal as livestock, but it's not limited to livestock or fowl. Any animal in this chapter that's repeatedly found at large, found to be at large on 3 occasions within a 12-month period as prima facie evidence. And then we list some other ways that an animal can become an habitual livestock animal in there.
And is that just going to carry some kind of fine?
I'm sorry?
And is a violation just going to carry some kind of fine there?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Thank you for, I passed that up, looked at slaughtering of animals. Removal of waste, manure, and animal droppings. We were cautious with this because a lot of people use this as compost, and so we put the word "if" in here to manure droppings or food waste from animals shall not be used for compost if they create a public nuisance, odor, or health and safety issue. Because like I said, a lot of people use those as compost. We talk about the noise, and this pertains to noises that animals make. It's the habitual, the continual barking, or the continual braying, or different animal sounds. Talk about shooting or catching of wild birds. And with that, we're talking about primarily your wildfowl, your ducks and geese with that. We go back over the different animals. So we talk about the rabbits and small animals and the different structures for them, how many you can have. And then, again, a permit is required, and that there's no charge for the permit at this time. We also talk about temporary permits, that with the temporary permit shall be valid for a number of days, not to exceed 15 consecutive days, and no person may apply for more than 3 temporary permits within a 12-month period. We also provide in this ordinance waivers and exemptions. So with the waivers, there's several different types of waivers, and we wanted to give the opportunity for you to be the public hearing for that. If you should decide that you don't want that, we can take that and put it on animal control's shoulders. But I think with a public hearing, it would feel fair, a lot more fair with that.
I think there's a lot of emotion attached to these animals, and I think it would be worthwhile to have either a town hall or, for sure, a public hearing about that.
Absolutely, absolutely correct. So with this, with a waiver, we can, before granting the waiver, City Council shall hold a public hearing regarding the requested waiver not earlier than 15 days from notice of a public hearing, and no waiver shall be granted unless the City Council finds that all the conditions exist. And those are basically that they have the property for the type of animal, they have the type of enclosure that they should have. Joe would go check that. Our animal control officer would check that. Also, that if strict application of these provisions within our ordinance, if someone, it's not detrimental to health, it's not detrimental to the safety of our community, no one has complained, then they should be given a waiver for that area. So we've put that into this ordinance so that a waiver can be issued. And I'll give Miss Betty as an example back here. Miss Betty owns a block. She owns a city block, and she has several chickens on her property. We've never received a complaint on her property. And where her fowl are situated, we probably would never receive a complaint on her. And with that, she would probably qualify for a waiver with that. I say probably because that would be up to you, not us, with that. And so we also provide waivers for, when you think about what we went through with the ice and cold, a waiver for if there's a food shortage or a food supply shortage. We can just give a blanket waiver with that. So we provide several different waivers in here. With the exemptions also, in section 10-163, we provide some exemptions for stock shows, fairs, rodeos, parades, festivals, zoological institutions, veterinarians, or trainings. We talk about the schools are exempted, the 4-H, FFA are exempted, slaughtering establishments are exempted. We had the brush control, the goats that came along the creek, those would be exempted. And then other types of exemptions. And then recently went down to Chambers County, and I'm off in the middle of nowhere, and I go to make a turn to go to a large city, and on the side of the road is a vendor, and he has cages so big with goats, little calf, chickens, ducks, and I went, we don't want that. So we added the no roadside vendors to this ordinance also. Again, we go through and list numerous ways that someone would not have to get rid of their animals, that they could provide for a waiver with that. Basically, if they take care of their animals, if we don't get complaints on them, if we've not filed any public nuisance complaints on them, other than those animals that are prohibited, they would more than likely be able to keep their animals with this ordinance. Also, 10-164 is a notice of revocation. Should they receive a permit, should they receive a waiver, these are the things that could get that removed, have it removed from them so that they could not have their animals. 10-165 is about strayed animals, what we have to do if we come across livestock that's just strayed, and how we have to notify the sheriff with that and the procedures with that. And then the penalty for violation. This would be a Class C misdemeanor for any violation in this ordinance with a fine up to $500. And then each day would be a violation in itself. And then that habitual violator is also listed there with the penalties, that 3 offense convictions in a 12-month period would be considered a habitual violator, and they shall not be allowed to possess any livestock or animals in this chapter in city limits for a minimum period of 12 months. What happens is, currently, when we have a violator for the public nuisance, which is what we file, oftentimes they'll be cited either by animal control or by a citizen that'll sign a complaint. And then they can go before our municipal judge to the court, and they can pay a fine. And a lot of times they don't even go before a judge. They'll just go in and say, I'm guilty of this, and they will go pay their fine, which doesn't give an option for us to go. They have 22 pigs, and we need some of those pigs to be removed. And they just keep going and paying their fine with that.
Did we talk about limiting the dollar amount or expending the dollar amount of that? If you had one fine, it's this, but if you keep going back to get your pigs again?
We did not. That would be up to municipal court for that. We just put the maximum that's Class C misdemeanor with a violation of $500. And then with the habitual violator for the 3 times with that.
The court would then do that, okay.
Then that would be considered a public nuisance. Yes, ma'am.
So what kind of situation would you have if, let's say you have someone that has 20 pigs on their property, they get the 3 convictions in a year, they're barred from having anything out there for a year, but they still say to heck with it, and they've got them out. What do you do in that situation?
In that situation, then the judge would be able to, Joe would be able to go to the judge, talk to the judge, and say, this is a habitual violator. we need to remove those pigs from the property, and then he would seek the warrant to have those animals removed.
Okay, that's when the
And
city
this
can
would
step
give
in.
some power with that to do that. Currently, we don't have any. We can seek a warrant, and we can go help them clean up the property. We can go help them with care for their animals, but there's nothing right now to where we can actually remove those animals unless they're being mistreated, unless we get into the cruelty of those animals. I want to say in 2 occasions, and I'm thinking of the large amount of rabbits that we had, and when we went, those animals were fine, but they were large. We had a large volume of animals with that. Any questions?
Anyone have any other thoughts? I do think we should take it either to a public hearing or the town hall, because there will be lots of controversy, I'm sure.
We've received quite a few phone calls recently in regards to the draft. I've had some people ask if they could have a copy of whatever we're working on, and explain to them that we would have a draft available tonight. We would like to present this to our prosecuting attorney, Ms. Boltran, and to the city attorney to review for us. And then, of course, we need to refine it to fix some of the, where we went from 6 to 8 and some other, as you mentioned, from less to more in there. Any questions, any comments?
Any other?
I agree. I would agree. Do we want to try to set a time, or we want to wait for another draft before we decide when to set a time for a city or for a town hall?
I'd say get the final draft, just in case we change anything.
This is a starting point, so if you see something in here, please let Joe or I know, and we'll go back through it and see if we can find a better way to word this, to say this. It is a highly emotional issue with people with animals, and we get that it's been an agricultural community forever, and I was here before the new house was built or before the new duplex was built, and so we have to address those issues with it as well, with talking to people. There is within this ordinance is it talks about new construction also next to a residence as well with that. Okay.
Thank you, Chief Bailey. Next item is a discussion regarding the draft City Council Orientation Handbook. Becky?
Mayor, we're going to ask if we can move to item number 8 to the workshop.
Sure. Okay, discussion regarding appointment, Hill Country Transit Advisory Board.
Mayor and Council, Judge Hoyer's in attendance, as well as Mr. Tony Austin, to discuss some of the changes that are going on at the HOP, and with that, I'll turn it over to them.
Thank you, members of City Council, and this is Tony Austin. He's the Rural Director of the Hill Country Transit. As County Judge, I serve on the board of the Hill Country Transit, and recently the Hill Country Board of Directors had a study done on the transit system, and as you are aware, Hill Country Transit provides a service here in Lampasas County and the city of Lampasas for transit. And part of that study is to look at the operation. The general manager recently retired, and the board decided to explore the possibility of, number one, looking at the operation itself. Is the current operation what we want out of it? So we had a company come in and did an extensive study. The other piece of this right here is the urban versus the rural part. And I'm going to let Tony talk here just a little bit about the rural, because that impacts us. But ultimately, what I'm here for is to ask for a representative to to serve on the advisory committee. I serve on the board, but we're looking to create an advisory committee from the various counties and cities that the transit system serves. And I had a meeting the other day with the city manager and with the new mayor, and in essence was asking if the new mayor would consider serving on this advisory committee. Since then, I've also found out that we'll need an alternate as well, and so I see some other possible candidates to possibly serve as an alternate on here. But I asked Mr. Austin to come in attendance because a lot of times the HOP does not get perhaps a notice that recognition. They're not just so recognition, they serve a purpose. And sometimes we see the HOP buses, the transit buses, but we really know what they're doing and what are they serving. And I suspected that when I got up here in front of you and was talking about the transit, you may have some questions that I wouldn't be able to answer. So I'm going to turn it over to Tony to let him just briefly talk about the rural operation and then maybe answer any questions you might have.
Good evening, Mayor, council members. Yeah, so Hill Country Transit District is a rural public transportation system. We cover 9 counties, all the way from Milan County, all the way out to Mason County, and as far north as Hamilton County. The rural system basically covers all those counties except for Bell County, which, as you know, is pretty much on the urbanized system with Killeen Temple, Harker Heights, Nolanville, and et cetera. Part of Coryell County is also in the urbanized system through in Coppers Cove. So basically, I cover the rest of all that county. We are a unique system in the fact that we have two urbanized systems with us. One is a Temple urbanized system, the other one's the Killeen Metropolitan urbanized system, and then of course the rural division. So it's really unique in the state of Texas, pretty much across this nation, of having that much of a challenge that we have. We pull from 10 different funding sources. We try to provide as much transportation as we can with the service in our areas, so we're kind of unique. So our admin staff in San Saba has to try to keep all that funding separated because of the fact that we start from the federal all the way down to local and some contractual obligations that we have. So in the rural, though, basically we provide public transportation to anybody. So I have a little saying that when people ask me, how do you qualify? As long as you're breathing, then therefore you qualify. And then we also sometimes think that maybe we'll waiver that one. So we will provide transportation unlike urban. Urban, you have to qualify to be able to ride their riders, and you have to live within a certain area to be able to ride the riders. So in the rural area, it doesn't matter. We cover Lampasas County. We do a lot of trips coming out of Kempner, coming into Lampasas. And of course, a lot of trips from here going into the metropolitan to Killeen area. So that's what we do. But our challenge is always resources. I only have 3 assigned drivers in Lampasas with 5 vehicles, and it really does tax everything that we kind of try to do. We provide school services to outside your school districts. So a lot of times, you know, school districts are held to a certain requirements. They can go from mom and dad's house to the school and back. We do all the rest of it, going to daycare centers, going to grandma's house, going to the workplaces, et cetera, so we provide that service there. I have made one rule that is in our system, unique, is when we are transporting the school children, we do not transport any adults with those children to keep them safe and make sure that nobody else is riding on it. So that's the only standard I have that I have set since I've come on board, but it becomes another challenge because of the fact that now I cannot transport people during that 3 to 4 o'clock time period and the 7 to 8 o'clock in the morning time period when I'm transporting children. So we do a lot of transportation for the school districts. That's our biggest ridership in the rural areas, along with a contractual obligation with the Medicaid contract through it. Right now, it's a broker called Motive Care. First 1 June, it's going to become a company called Safe Ride. And then we try to do all the Medicaid transportation going into the hospitals and et cetera. The other big challenges we have is dialysis. As you know, dialysis is becoming more and more prevalent to a lot of older people, and therefore we have to take them. And of course, that sometimes ties us out because we have to take a dialysis client to clean, and they dialyze between 3 to 4 hours a day, 3 times a week, so it sometimes knocks a driver out during that time period. My whole goal is always to do as many trips as possible. So I cannot set a priority, because we try to make sure that I can do as many people as can. A lot of people get upset that I don't do some medical trips versus when I take seniors to the senior center to eat. Those are equivalent to me. They're just numbers that I have to challenge myself with to make sure that I try to maximize the service across our county area. So that's basically about Hill Country Transit and what we kind of do.
You mentioned school children, and I'm surprised that you would be transporting children. Why would that be?
Again, the school districts have, most of the times they have a regulation that says they can pick up mom and dad from the child from mom and dad's house, take them to the school, and they have to bring them back to mom and dad's house. That's the school districts.
And I'll jump in, Tony. School doesn't transport if you're within 2 miles of
Correct.
the campus. And so we do have situations, you know, you can live 1.9 miles from school. It's too far for an elementary child to walk. Mom and dad can't get them there.
Okay. Okay,
Yeah, we just kind of fill that little void that the school districts can't do.
okay, thanks.
Mr. Elston, I'm curious, is it just a first come, first serve with request on rides?
Yes.
Okay.
Except for our out-of-town. So our out-of-town trips, we basically are going into the clean. So if somebody wants to go from here to clean, we typically try to, what we call piggyback that on a medical trip going that way. So sometimes people don't get those trips that they would like to have, but we try to maximize and a lot of our clients that constantly ride with us have learned that they'll try to call us to figure out when's the best time to set their appointments, and that way it assures their trips.
I know you have reimbursement for Medicaid funding, but do you have any Medicare reimbursement?
As it stands right now, no.
Okay. I thought that was still the same answer that's been there forever.
They, from what I understand, that's getting ready to change. I know HHSC has, as I was saying, that we're going with another company. The current company right now is supposed to be taking the Medicare contract, and we don't know if they're going to stay with us or not.
Okay.
Any other comments or questions? Thank you for coming and sharing that with us.
Thank you.
So ultimately, I'm going to go back to kind of what we got started here. I'm requesting an individual, mayor, or any of y'all, to serve on the advisory board. I can't tell you a whole lot about it because at this point in time, we don't know how often they'll meet. I'm assuming it won't be very often. It's not a voting type capacity. It is strictly in an advisory capacity because I felt like this group right here would get the ear of the community regarding issues and concerns with the HOP. And then you would be able to bring them back with other advisory members. So that's what I'm requesting is a advisory member and an alternate.
I'd be happy to serve on that committee. Do we have anyone that wants to be an alternate?
Mayor and Council, there is a corresponding item on the regular agenda for that designation or
So
appointment.
we'll nominate Robert. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. So we'll go back to discussion regarding the draft City Council Orientation Handbook.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. As you'll see in your packet, I put together a draft for y'all to review. It's about 40 pages long, and it's still growing. It's just kind of like I'm trying to ensure that any resources that I have available to me, I'm trying to make sure that they're available to you as well. I will mention a few things that I'll point out to you as we go through it. On page 3, I still have to get the budget and the funding. Reference page will be added, so that is something that I haven't overlooked. I just haven't got that prepared yet. Pages 5 through 15 are more facilities. So that's going to show you all the pictures of all of our departments and all of our facilities we have around town with the address. And then it also shows you who the supervisors are, the superintendents, any of the managers, anybody who's responsible for that area. One thing I did want to mention is we've talked several times about tours and about scheduling facilities, and that is something that we really need to pre-schedule with either myself or with the city manager. And normally we try to do it as a group, more like 2 or 3 of y'all at one time. We'll go and visit there for a few hours. They can do like a presentation. They can explain things to you, walk you through that, that facility. And the reason we want them to be scheduled is just to alleviate any type of disruption in their day, because depending on what that day is, it could be very hectic for them. And then also make sure that they stay focused and that they're prepared to be able to present you with a good tour of their facility. Pages 18 through 19 is the forms of government. We are a home rule city, so I kind of defined that for you and gave you a description of what that means. The city, we are a council management form of government, and then the city manager administers the day-to-day activities. He directs the workforce, the programs, in accordance with the ordinance and the rules and regulations that we adopt, depending on what we need to change with our code of ordinances, our zoning regs, our subdivision regs. That's what we enforce. The mayor and council have no administrative type duties. So pages 22 through 32 is all in the governance policy. And this is kind of where this whole process started. We kind of were looking at it. We felt that there were some areas that were kind of out of date and that needed to be improved, and we needed to enhance some of those options. So while I was going through the governance policy, I was thinking, we really need to make this more robust, make it more informational, more, resources to you. And so I plugged in the governance policy into this handbook so that maybe you would have one-stop shop. So you'd have everything at your fingertips. So there's really not a whole lot changed in the actual governance policy itself from what we've talked about at previous council meetings. A few things to highlight: that the governance policy itself, it outlines the council and staff relations. It's the mayor and mayor pro tem responsibilities, the council responsibilities, the types of meetings we have, like we have the special session, we have the workshop, we have the regular, we could have a called special meeting sometime. We have our budget meetings, where we might have a budget workshop meeting. And then we even may have an emergency meeting. If we have some kind of disaster that happens, we might have to say we need to call a meeting within the next hour to make a decision on something. So it kind of goes through all those types of meetings that we could have. We have the agendas, the notice of meetings. It talks about the general order of meetings, so how your meeting is held, how it's conducted, the right to floor. A lot of that comes with, being courteous to one another, making sure everybody has equal opportunity to speak before whatever item is being discussed. And then, of course, all decisions and all discussions should be a collaborative effort. We shouldn't have one person, speaking for council. Every council member should have their own voice and be able to have their voices be heard. And that kind of describes all that in that section as well. And with that being said, with the packet, when we send out the packet on Friday, that's an opportunity for y'all. If y'all have any questions whatsoever, if you don't understand something, or if it doesn't make sense, or you just have no clue, or you want more information about it, please let us know, because we'll always provide y'all with more information either over the weekend, Monday morning, we'll come and talk and visit, we'll provide you more information, or even Monday night, if we need to elaborate more, we'll bring more documentation to you, so that way you are well prepared for making any decisions you have to make. Okay? Pages 33 through 37 are training resources. This is wonderful. TML is a wonderful resource for you to be able to use. That's where I sent out to y'all for the newly elected officials that we'll be going to at the end of July. It's just a 2-day class, but again, it's very informative. The Texas Open Meetings Act, this is something that you will have to have within 90 days of taking your seat. It's just a 1-hour course. This will be covered when we go in July. If anybody ever wants a refresher, wants additional classes, wants additional information, let me know. We'll find it. We'll get you what you need. A quorum of 4 must be in attendance to conduct any official city business. Agenda must be posted 72 hours in advance. I have to post on Friday for our Monday meeting. There is no ifs, ands, buts about it. It's got to be done. Regular meetings, of course, are open to the public. So unless it's executive session, everything is pretty much open. They can come in, they can visit. And they can voice their concern as well. One thing I do want to point out to y'all is that there are very, very stiff penalties for this Open Meetings Act. It is crucial that we follow it by the book. Any illegal closed meetings, for example, And when we were in our old council building, it was a smaller room and voices traveled. So one time I went to go shut the door and immediately everybody said, no, you can't do that, because I was making it a closed session and it had to be an open session. So just like these doors have to be open, we have to make sure that the only time it's a closed session is if you're in executive session and it's a closed session. So we have to be real mindful of that because there's penalties that come with that. Council members who conspire to circumvent the regulations of the law by meeting in numbers less than a quorum. So as innocent as having coffee or a text or an email could be with one of your peers, you can't do that. You're not able to do that. That's a walking quorum. That's a daisy chain. It's not something that you should be participating in. As a joint collaborative effort, everybody should have the same information at any given time. So whenever y'all are meeting separately, it's not giving everybody the benefit of having the same information. So anytime like workshops we have, this is a great opportunity. Any questions you have that can be addressed. One other thing, I went over the walking quorums. And then the other item in there is the Texas Public Information Act, which was previously known as the Open Records Act previously. So anything that comes in that people want to know about, that's something that we have to provide them, typically. So one thing to keep in mind as a council member that you kind of want to, if anything were to be texted, emailed, on your phone, just casual on your computer, if you don't want it put in the newspaper, don't put it in writing, because everything is pretty much is subject to open records. So as innocent as it could be, it could get us in a lot of trouble. So you just kind of want to be real mindful about what you're doing, especially when you're conducting city business. Okay. So that was all that I kind of wanted to point out when I went through the packet. Is there anything that y'all have questions for me that I might be able to address for you this evening?
Becky, quick question. But
Yes, sir.
When they come out on Friday evening or afternoon, is it okay if we go through the PD on Saturday to get into the building to pick our packets up out of our boxes?
Y'all have fobs.
Yeah, I know. I just,
You don't need to go to PD. You can have access to the back door. Everybody should, with
we
minus
don't need,
Kathy.
okay, that's fine.
Yeah. But yeah, y'all are more than welcome. Y'all have access whenever y'all need to, and I'll have to get Urban, Zach, and then if you want a new one, I'll get you a new one. But that fob will get you in access to City Hall at any time. So if you can't make it between 8 and 5, you can come on the weekends. And with that being said too, as soon as I send out the email to y'all, letting y'all know that the packet is ready, the packet's ready. You can go on our website, you can view it, you can look at it, you can print stuff, you can look at it, at your leisure, if you can't get here to get your packet. But again, like I said, anytime you have any questions, because I'm still learning, there's still things I don't understand and still have to research, but we try to put the agendas together in a way that it makes sense, and we try to provide you as much backstory as we can to each item, and then provide you all the backup documentation that we have available to us. So if that's not enough or you need more, by all means ask us. Yes, sir. I'm going to get those changed over tomorrow. It's actually when you walk into City Hall, to the left is our break room, and inside that room there is a mailbox, and every one of you will have your name on there, and that's where your packet will be, or any other mail that y'all get at the city.
What about with in regards to emails? Like, will us new members get like a city email address?
Yes.
Okay.
You will get an email.
So if all city business is done on that, then like work email, personal email, all that's separate.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes. That's the way it should be.
Not because I'm trying to hide anything.
Yeah,
I'm thinking about that attorney-client privilege stuff. You
Yes,
know?
I know. I understand. But yes, you will all have a city email. Any other questions? These are great questions.
Done a tremendous job, Becky. That's
Thank
a lot of
you.
information in one little packet there.
Thank you. If there's anything else y'all want me to add, let me know. Because like I said, it's a living, breathing document. I mean, I'd like to get it out to y'all at the next meeting if y'all don't have any corrections or changes to it. But absolutely, let me know. Because I mean, whatever y'all don't have, I want y'all to have it at your fingertips. Because I'll put these in a binder. Sorry, I talk with my hands. But I'll put it in a binder for y'all, and that way y'all have it at your disposal whenever you need it.
Okay. We had talked earlier about a laminated card that has all of the council phone numbers, email,
Yes.
directors. That would be useful for me to have.
Yes, and I'm glad you brought that up. That is something that I do want to reiterate. When it comes to when a citizen walks into City Hall and they want information from y'all, or y'all, your name or your phone number, I always take their information and I'll email y'all or text y'all and say, hey, so-and-so wants to talk to y'all, because I'm not really sure what information you want to provide to the citizens or how you want to correspond with them. A lot of the times we can handle their issues at City Hall. They don't really need to speak to a council member, but sometimes they want to, and we want to give them that opportunity. So that is something that I'll probably be sending out, or y'all can text me or y'all can email me and let me know how you want to be notified by citizens. If it's by text, a certain phone number, what you want to be public information. And then we'll put little cards together and we'll laminate it, and that way we can get it out to everybody.
Okay, sounds great. Any other comments, questions?
All right, thank you very much.
Thanks, Becky. So next is directions regarding the city council work plan.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Got the next 2 or 3 agenda items, but to start off with, the council work plan is on the agenda primarily, or ultimately, to get some sort of consensus on a date and a format that you would like to take for a gathering that we could spend some time and talk about some items that are important to you. We've done a city council work plan probably about every 18 months up until the start and stop process that we got ourselves into with COVID, as well as with the change in election dates. We did bring it back to you starting, I guess, about 15 months ago. In September of 20, we did do some work towards that, and then decided to hold off until after the November election. After the November election, we tried to have a gathering on December 18th, and one of our presenters came down with COVID, and so we backed off because that was an integral part of what you wanted to hear and listen to. Ultimately, we picked up some of those pieces just through our regular meetings, through our workshop sessions, for example, with Mr. Jones coming and talking about pre-treatment and doing a little more in-depth in one of our workshops on the comprehensive planning process. On January 11th, Council did defer setting a date, but did request those particular items on workshops. February 8th, it was also brought up again, and at that time, we were directed to postpone until after the May 21 election, which is tonight. We've seated new council, and we should be ready to go, and we're interested in your ideas on a date and format. I do just want to run through, this is a similar slide that we have done, or presentation that we've done in the past, but typically the format has included a half to 3/4 of a day. We've spent some time at varied locations depending on what the interests of council was. We wanted to initially have this done at the new wastewater shop and lab, but again, we weren't able to get that done because of COVID and the postponement of certain meetings. The other thing that we are also interested in getting your input on is, do you want any outside resources? Do you want us to bring in, for example, Antonio Naylor to talk about, his design for the hostess house? I've always asked, would you like this to be facilitated by an outside resource? That's going to cost you some money, and we've always kind of fallen back to a staff-facilitated meeting, and I think that's been fairly productive. The plan pieces, and the one thing that you'll hear me say perhaps more than once is that we don't want to duplicate our current efforts. In other words, we don't want to create a CIP plan out of a council working plan. We want it to be as inclusive as possible, make sure we get all of your priorities within, but we don't want to be duplicative in terms of the planning process. Sometimes we identify additional planning that's needed. The general areas that council has included in their work plan have been capacity building, and by that I mean, how do we work with the county? How do we work with the school district, with the community organizations, and how do we build not only our capacity, but the capacity of all those organizations to work together? Your plan has also been fairly robust in terms of community engagement. That's where, when we started having town hall meetings, that was a byproduct of what you felt was important in terms of ways we could engage the community more. Communications along the same line. How do we do the best job that we possibly can getting information out to our community, eliciting information from our citizens, et cetera. And then also we spend time talking about council staff expectations. Those have been very broad brushstrokes of what you have included in your plan. It's not inclusive, but it gives you an idea that this is kind of sets it apart from a capital improvement program or comprehensive planning program, et cetera. So, in terms of what we talked about in September, just again, the whole timing, the process, the format, you may want to hear from a particular department or two, and we'd certainly want to accommodate that. And we don't want to duplicate other planning documents or efforts. In terms of setting priorities, we want it to be inclusive, incorporate capital priorities and staff work plan. Timeliness, we want to set benchmarks up so that we can score our progress to that plan. We also want to identify, what other updates you'd like to have on a reoccurring basis. One of the things that we heard within this last year or so is, instead of getting an update on a project here and here and here, we always try to either push out an update either through email or the manager's report, or it's on the agenda regularly, but some sort of a more all-inclusive update on our projects currently in the works. Project tasks and priorities, just to be clear, we want to make sure that these are collective priorities, that these aren't singular either from one or two council people or one or two staff people that try to push something up. We want to make sure that this is a collective process whereby council as a whole discusses what's important to them. How we are currently setting priorities, either through identification and a planning activity. For example, our comprehensive plan is going to put a lot of work on elected officials as well as staff to meet some of the targets that have been identified within that program. CIP program, that's another item where we do a planning process that's reviewed, acknowledged, and accepted by council. And then probably the ultimate prioritization is when you set a budget. When you put dollars to a task, that is a very clear message to staff that that's what's important to you. So your budget in itself is a council work plan, it's a staff work plan. When you say we're going to pave East 3rd Street this year and we're going to set aside funds, that's a very clear directive for staff to follow. So we want to make sure that there are a number of ways that you can prioritize and you can tell staff what's important through the current planning processes we have, but ultimately when you put dollars to a program, that's what we put to the top of the list. We have also talked about how we interact with the public, identification of different needs, and we do a lot of that. Sometimes it's introduced as a report item on my report to you, and then we ask council, do you want us to take that a step further? Do you want us to do further investigation? If it's basically we don't hear any directive from council, we consider that a clear indication of that's not a priority for you. So I think the big questions for this evening are, when would you like to do it? Is this a reasonable format? It'll take half to 3/4 of a day as a starting point. Then we come back 2 or 3 times, usually at workshop, until we actually get a finalized document. So with that, I'd be happy to take any questions and certainly anxious for your direction.
I think several of us are probably open most of the time. We do have a couple of people. Kathy, are you still in school?
And we finished school, but we will be traveling quite a bit in June because we're ready to get out of town after this last year. So I would, if we could do it in July, that would be great.
Councilman Clark.
I just have a question. Do we have and any time is pretty much okay with me, I can work my schedule around it, but do we have a list of approved projects, programs that we have approved as a council to set forward? Not only for us, a list, no priorities, I don't need priorities. We have a council to do that. But I just wondered if we had a full list of those things. If you had them somewhere, that may help myself as well as some of the new council members know what has been approved versus what's still out there.
Yes, I believe we went through that but this fall. I think we had, in fact, I think we even took a couple of workshops to get through the entire list. But what I'll do is I'll pull out the list that we've given you previously and then dust it, make sure that it's up to date.
If we're taking suggestions on where to go, I personally would like to go to the water wastewater plant. I think some others have already done that, so it might just be something I need to do. I don't know. I would also like to go through the hostess house with your, what's it called? Yes, Reliance, just to explain some of the diagrams and such, and so that I can physically see what he's talking about. Those would be a couple of things I'm interested in.
And also maybe Jason could come and talk with us. Mr. Jones could come and talk with us regards to the improvements of the wastewater and the pretreatment again.
And we may want to wait until we get some reply back from Ajinomoto. It would just be probably a little, provide a greater depth of perspective from what the ultimate fix might be, but I can certainly check in with Mr. Jones.
And if we needed to do it, we don't leave till June 4th. So if we needed to do it like next week, that'd probably be all right. In the afternoon would be better.
Do our new guys have got anything you're interested in especially? Tell us. Tell us.
I mean, I'd love to see the wastewater treatment and just the inner workings and talk to some of the guys and just so I can get a better understanding of how it all works.
So maybe for those of us who have not already seen that, we could set something up soon.
I'd definitely say wastewater and hostess house.
And how do you also have another department for your streets?
Yes.
Yeah, and I would be interested in seeing that too as well. And how they make decisions and just kind of the inner workings and kind of what goes on behind the curtain there.
You bet.
So any suggestions on a date?
Would it be easier weekday or weekend?
It's at the pleasure of council.
We normally do weekdays, but we have done a weekend as well.
I'm flexible either way, preferably the weekday.
I'd say the second and third week of July. I've got 6th, 7th, 8th, 13th, 14th, and 15th. All those are open right now.
Anyone else have any conflicts with those dates?
Okay.
We certainly don't want to interfere with that.
Did you get those dates, Becky?
And that's the week of Spring Hoe,
As well.
right? No, isn't that the week of Spring Hoe?
12th is the week of Spring Hoe, is that right?
It's a week before, I think.
I said I've got the 6th, 7th, 8th, 13th, 14th, 15th. Looks like the 22nd and the 27th. Just me personally.
Kathy, when are you leaving?
The 4th of June.
So you'll be back by July?
Yes, ma'am, that's the 30th.
Sounds like most any of those days would work for most of us.
Are there any items that you would like for us to begin to prepare for in advance of that meeting? I think we've got an understanding of an agenda. Or maybe what we'll do is put together a tentative agenda, present that to you at the next meeting, and then elicit your feedback. That way we can focus in on what's important to you.
Sounds good.
And we'll send out, we'll just send you out the dates, and if something comes up, let us know. But we'll try to get together as staff and decide on when would be good, or hopefully there's no conflicts at the hostess house.
Any other comments or questions? Thanks, Finley. So we're going to have a discussion regarding the draft amendment to subdivision regulations regarding alternate methods, for guarantee of infrastructure.
Mayor and Council, this is a follow-up item initially at the request of Councilman Clark, and I think everybody realized the value of this, particularly after going through our last development agreement and the alternative form that Council ultimately approved. The idea or the purpose of this amendment is to allow more of an administrative approval of a performance guarantee on a subdivision for the public infrastructure that's being installed by the developer. The key points of this amendment would be that it would have to be in a bank that is currently doing business in Texas and is an acceptable level bank. The bank board would have to approve the letter of credit. The city would be the sole beneficiary. It would be an irrevocable document, automatically renewing. It would cover the remaining costs of construction. The city would have the right to partial or total draws, and it would have to be accepted in writing. This is something that the city attorney and I looked at and worked on, and we didn't feel like there were any other types of guarantees out there. We even talked about, if somebody wanted to put dollars in escrow, but then we were curious why someone would put dollars in escrow if they could go ahead and finish out the construction. So that's really what we've come up with. We think that this is a fairly complete and comprehensive amendment that would allow a little bit easier discussion, decision-making related to that guarantee.
And this would be with your approval?
This would allow administrative approval. It would also allow us to, if we didn't feel comfortable with a portion of the letter of credit, we could kick it back up to council with those concerns.
Good.
I requested it originally. I've read this a couple of times and discussed it with you, that you've talked to the attorney. I'm certainly satisfied with it as an alternative form.
Anyone else have any questions or concerns?
There is a corresponding action item on the regular agenda if council wishes to take action on it.
Okay. Next item is discussion regarding the hostess house improvements.
Mayor and Council, I believe it was, February of 21, we presented an initial MEP comments to you related to the hostess house. This is something that, as a result of the CIP process and council directive, we sought to get a more complete and formal assessment of the hostess house. We, at council's approval, we did engage Reliance Architecture and their principal, Antonio Naylor, who also was the architect for the water wastewater shop and lab. We had finally received some initial, at least conceptual drawings at the May 10th meeting, and we now come to you with his more complete concept with budgetary costs. You'll see that there are three schemes related to the improvements on the east side, which would generally include the elevator, restrooms. Those three schemes are at a cost of between about $500,000 and $770,000. There are Also three schemes or three options for the kitchen, which vary in cost from $23,400 to almost $90,000. And I think that was really the direct charge from council, is give us some concepts, let us see what the different budget costs would be. The one thing that I do want to also point out, or a couple of things. One is these are construction costs. These don't necessarily include design costs, bidding, construction administration, bonding. So there will be some other costs on top of this. The other item that I would point out as part of Mr. Naylor's scope is we also had a review by a structural engineer. So he came out at the same time that Antonio came out, and he has figured the live load on the ground floor on the first level at about 50 pounds a square foot, which is okay for an office designation. He says the real problem is this is a public assembly use, and your live load really needs to be 100 pounds per square foot. So he is, again, without doing much design or any design work, just simply assessment, he feels like that is probably about $100,000 to $200,000 fix. Again, that's a huge gap, but he has not put the pencil to the paper, and we have not engaged him to do that design work. That being said, we're not looking for you to say, boy, this looks great and let's move forward, because I think you've also gotten messages from staff and from myself that, we've got a limited amount of dollars in our hot fund. Perhaps we need to take the opportunity when we get together and can really focus on this in a planning meeting and decide, the direction that we would want to go. But the items that we tried to address is, one, accessibility, the elevator. We felt like it was an opportunity maybe to put a restroom on the second floor instead of having to go downstairs and then outside to get to the restroom. So there are a lot of, I think, great advantages. It's a great design. These three designs, we might come up with a hybrid that makes more sense than any of them. But I think in terms of what we paid Mr. Naylor to do, I think he's given us some good ideas to look at. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
As with any remodel, I'm assuming that we could pick and choose what we have the money for, the most urgent ones, and put the rest on hold?
Yes, I think we could do some phasing. Obviously, if you get into a bump out on the east side to accommodate a new elevator shaft, you're probably money better spent to go ahead and take care of restrooms at that time. So there may be some economies in getting more done at this time than phasing bits of it. But I would defer to Antonio on that.
There are two main questions that I had for you. One was the structural issue is very concerning to me. Mm-hmm. The other is the bump out on the east side.
Correct.
I believe I asked you today, I had concerns. There's a 16-inch water line that runs between the building and the highway, and I wanted to make sure that was clear of this bump out.
Sure.
We think it is, but
yes,
we don't know for sure.
Right, and we'll obviously go in and pothole it before any construction's done. But we did, when Antonio was over, we did have our water department staff, Mike Blair was with us, just to confirm exactly where that water line was. Again, until we maybe do a locate or do a pothole, that's what we want to do.
I think Mike knows because he's dug it up once or twice.
Right,
but
right. But certainly that was a concern that was brought up at the time of their visit.
Finley, what kind of bring me up to speed? What are we going to be using the hostess house for going forward, and how will we pay for this stuff?
I think the vision for the hostess house is not necessarily that the hostess house would be able to generate revenue to cover these sorts of upgrades, but the byproducts of having that type of facility in the city in terms of the attraction of weddings and events and be a resource for the public could have some spin-off economic benefits. So it's not necessarily just look at this one particular expenditure and an ROI on that one expenditure from that source. It's more of a what is the value of this type of facility to the community and also for people coming into the community. What we would look at in terms of the expenditure on this, because it would attract folks from out of town for these various events, it certainly would make it a candidate for use of hotel occupancy funds. So that would be, at least I think at this point, the primary source of funds or considerations.
What's the occupancy there right now?
90 per floor. 90 per floor. Is that right, Chief? Vicki? Now, two of the schemes that Mr. Naylor put together do call for some increased space, as that bump out allows us to move some of those other used spaces out. It perhaps could give us a little more floor space on both levels.
Any other comments or questions?
I assume that we'd like to take this up at a planning meeting coming up, right? Thank you.
Thank you, Finley. Any discussions on any other item on the regular agenda? I'd suggest a small recess, 10 minutes. Anyone make a motion for that? Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
10 minutes. Okay, we're ready to reconvene the regular session. Call to order the regular session today. We're going to have an invocation and the pledges. Chief Bailey.
Please join me in prayer. Heavenly Father, we thank those for their selflessness and service that they provide to others, especially those that have dedicated so much to our community. Father, we thank you for the blessings that you bestow upon us daily. Father, we ask that you be by our side and that you guide us and walk with us on our path. Father, give us strength to face our adversities and peace in knowing that we can face anything with you by our side. Keep us safe from harm and keep us well. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. Pledge allegiance to the Texas, one state, under God, one indivisible. Thank you.
We do have a proclamation tonight for Ms. Patricia Eicher for 5 years service. She's not here, so we'll give her the plaque later. Okay, we have citizen comments for anyone who desires to address the City Council on a matter that is not included on the agenda may do so at this time. The City Council may not deliberate on the items presented under this agenda item. Do we have anyone? Nope. (1.2) Citizen comments. Any citizen who desires to address the City Council on a matter that is on the agenda may do so at this time. Anyone? Continuing on, we've got 2.1, discussion and possible action concerning approval of the minutes of the regular meeting on May 10th, 2021.
I didn't see any corrections. Recommend approval.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Unanimous. We have the consent agenda, which is discussion and possible action regarding the April 2021 investment report. Does anyone have any objection to that report, and do you want to approve it?
Recommend approval.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Unanimous. We were notified earlier this morning that we are not going to have the library monthly report. Is that still correct? So we will get that next meeting. Next item is City Manager's operational report.
Mayor and council, good evening. Just a few brief comments. You do have a memorandum in your packet that will follow my comments. If you had the opportunity to take a look at the 8th Court of Appeals YouTube station, you would have seen the oral arguments that were given last Thursday by our council as well as counsel from the Central Texas Water Supply Corp. and Kempner Water Supply Corp. I think the court did a very good job in terms of their understanding of not only the issues but the contract themselves. When Central Texas started to give their arguments about 3 or 4 minutes in, he was stopped and asked, what you're saying doesn't line up with what the contract says. And again, that's my version of it, but that's, I think, basically what Judge Talley said. Our attorneys kept a very consistent message. The contract is unambiguous. All customers mean all customers when calculating O&M expenses, and that in order to accept the Central Texas position, you have to modify the language of the contract. At another point in time, I believe Justice Palafox asked the Central Texas attorney, says, the court is bound by precedent. What allows the court to change the words or interpretation of a contract from the plain language? In which case, there is no citation given. We probably cited as many as 10 different cases within the briefs and within the argument, and Mr. Olson didn't cite a single case that would support their position. Obviously, what you hear in an argument could be different than what a decision says, but in terms of our representation as well as the court's understanding of the issues and the positions that were given by the two different sides, I felt pretty good about that. Certainly would encourage you, if you wanted to look at those arguments. It takes probably 45 minutes or an hour to get all of it in, but go to the YouTube channel for the 8th Court of Appeals. Campbell Park, we have received the geotech reports from Langham and Foster last week. We forwarded the same to the contractors as well as representatives from the stakeholders groups. We've asked our contractors to go ahead and put together some initial costs so that we can take a look at those. And just as a reminder to council, as part of the design build process, those contracts have to come back to you, even though we have selected a contractor, until they can provide us with a final design with the cost for that design, and council approves it, it doesn't move forward. Certainly, from what we've talked about previously in the workshop, it may be something that we get them to work on, get to a certain point, bring it back to you in a planning session, and that way we can kind of focus on those projects and moving them forward. Job fair, just a reminder that June 10th has been identified as a job fair hosted by LEDC. I believe the chamber is also working on that with the city. Workforce continues to be a huge issue for our businesses here in town, and we certainly take the opportunity to try to match employers up with potential candidates. The rugged sweep, I might just let the mayor talk about this in a minute, but the 36th Engineering Brigade has got a kind of a unique program that they've used as a challenge between the units, whereby they come in and do their physical training, their PT in town, which usually in this case will consist of a 4 to 5 mile run. But along the way, they try to pick up trash and they weigh the trash and they have challenges with other units. So they're coming to Lampasas, I believe, June 3rd. Sammy has been working with them to work out the details. If you do want to come out and cheer them on, you're just going to have to get up early, because I think they're going to link up at 6:15 and do accountability and then probably start running and picking up trash at 6:30. But Mayor, did I miss anything?
Well, except that I did tell them that Lampasas doesn't have much trash. And then I rode around with the two guys afterwards, and they're pointing out all the trash to me. So I think they will pick some up. So I said, no, we're pretty clean over here. But it's going to be nice to have them come through, and they're very competitive. So each one will be trying to run the fastest and pick up the most trash. So.
Chief Bailey, did I miss anything? And I think we will have some at least token of our appreciation in the form of some fruit and tacos and things like that that a benefactor picked up. So we appreciate that. LEDC, just to let you know, they did approve terms of a loan for Phase 1 of road and infrastructure development in the business park. This is a phase that they've been looking at for approximately 18 months. They have this engineered and have even submitted it to, or come close to submitting it to the Economic Development Administration based on leveraging prospects and possible job creation. That did not come to fruition. And originally when we talked about this, council felt like this was an important project to take a look at and perhaps even cost share if there was a deficit between construction costs and what LEDC was able to borrow. Based on the current financial performance as well as the terms, feels like LEDC can probably pick up the cost of this project on their own. Again, there are a lot of unknowns in the construction business, including infrastructure right now. So until we get it out to bid, we won't know exactly where we are. But I think council should anticipate some additional action items at a future meeting related to approval of that project, approval of that budget as required. Storm impacts, and primarily it was a storm we had Monday a week ago. We did lose a tree here at the Calvert building on the northwest corner of the building. We also lost a large oak tree at W.M. Brook Park. Van has to deal with all the limbs, and of course, until he gets all his limbs picked up, he can't cut grass, and Van's pretty focused on keeping that grass at a certain height. So some general disruptions, but all in all, the loss of a few trees, but I think we came out all right with that. Yes, ma'am.
May I suggest that the suggestion has already been made that you replace that tree with another tree? And I've gotten several recommendations as to what kind of tree.
We'd certainly look forward to council's recommendation on that.
I would agree with that. My wife says it was easy to sit under during the Spring Hope Parade.
Right. It does really open up the building, though, doesn't it? All right, we'll take that up during planting season.
Thanks.
Staff anniversaries, we do want to recognize the following staff that began their City of Lampasas careers in the month of May. Tony Barrio, 19 years. Josh Straley, 14 years. Marsal Chapa, 11 years. Warren Spivey Jr., 9 years. Andy McCatherine, 7 years. Colton Baker, 6 years. Patricia Eicher, 5 years. Francisco Palacios, 4 years. Esther Ramirez, 3 years. Danica Keeling, 3 years. Jonathan Guerra, 3 years. Thomas Kepler, 3 years. Marissa Smith, 2 years. And Rodney Kepler, 2 years. We hired a lot of people in May, I guess. A couple other just very quick items. I think council has been informed of this, but I did want to announce that Ricky Roy will be retiring for real this time. So we have already put out notification on that, and certainly as we talk about staffing and organizational structure, that could very well be another topic in our planning meeting. Also want to remind you that trash will be 1 day behind next week for Memorial Day. So if you get picked up on Monday and Thursday, it'll be Tuesday and Friday, and likewise for the other areas of town. I'd be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Finley. Next item is mayor comments, and I would just like to welcome our 2 new people, Zach Morris and Herb Pierce. Welcome them to the council. I'm sure we'll enjoy working with them, and we'll have many good sessions together. Also like to welcome back Mr. Clark, that he's back with us still. So the first item is 7.1, discussion and possible action regarding the first reading of an ordinance amending the City of Lampasas Code of Ordinances, Chapter 70, Subdivision, Section 70-6, Guarantee of Performance.
Mayor and Council, this was discussed in workshop. Be happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions, suggestions, comments?
Move to approve.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Unanimous. 7.2, discussion and consideration of a resolution granting a petition for voluntary annexation of Hillside Acres.
Mayor and Council, I kind of went into detail on the agenda cover, but this is just part of the Hillside Acres Development Agreement. We've actually got that wrapped up and executed with the letter of credit that we previously were approved. This is the next step, is the petition for the annexation of Hillside Acres. So this just gives the ladder to go forward with a public hearing and get the process started.
Any questions or comments?
Recommend approval.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Unanimous.
Thank you very much.
7.3, discussion and consideration for approval for the Lampasas Police Department to purchase a Vistacom recording solution.
Mayor, Council, since around September, we've had intermittent recording problems with our recording system at the police department. This recording system is for all the phone lines coming into the police department, 911, and for the radio system for the police department and the fire department. About the time that we think we have the problem fixed, we end up with another issue with it. When we implemented our new radio system, we found that the recording system is double recording. And when that happens, we're taking up 2 radio channels. Those radio channels are about $8,000, $10,000. So this solution that we've come up with to replace the recording system would give us back not only fix our current recording problem, but also give us back 2 radio channels. We have money within our budget. However, we're hoping to be reimbursed by the Central Texas Council of Government for the public safety entering point, the PSAP, or at least a partial reimbursement for that. So we're asking for approval of an amount not to exceed $8,865. $8,665 is a quote from Vistacom for the recording solution, and then some wiring that we know we're going to have replace from the old system to this new one. So we're asking for approval to not exceed $8,865 to purchase this system.
Do we have any questions?
What is the likelihood of us getting reimbursed from Central Texas Council of Governments?
I'm sorry?
What's the likelihood of getting some reimbursement on that?
They provided our old recording system, so we're hoping that they will reimburse us, and they're checking into it for us right now as well. So highly likely.
Anything else? A motion?
Move to approve $8,865.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Unanimous.
Mayor, Council, thank you.
7.4, discussion and possible action regarding the proposed feasibility assessment from Reliance Architect LLC to preserve the New Hope Baptist Church in an amount not to exceed $9,800.
Mayor and Council, this item came up as a result of a contact the city had made several months ago related to the New Hope Baptist Church. It's a facility that is adjacent to the historic colored school and has a similar historic value as the colored school. At the time that Mr. Naylor came over to review the hostess house, we did have him go over and take a look at the church. Just for additional background, it's an opportunity due to the size of their congregation as well as their desire to keep it preserved, whereby the city, in theory, could take conveyance of this facility, use it as a city facility, use it for restroom facilities at that site, as opposed to building restrooms for the historic colored school in itself. So there's some, I guess, some complementary assets that we could take on. That being said, we also just had a discussion about some of the priorities that we wanted to set in terms of hot funding, which this potentially could be, and staff would be open to holding off until such time as we could meet and focus on this as a city council and staff, but would certainly follow your direction regardless.
Finley, I might have asked this already, but if so, are they still having services at the church?
No, they are not currently.
Is this,
It would be open at any time if we did incorporate it, it could be used.
Correct. And again, I don't want to speak for Reverend Majors or their congregation. However, their worst fear is that someone buys it, tears it down, and puts a duplex there. Sure. This is a congregation that has been here for 150 years. It's probably one of the oldest congregations, and frankly, one of the oldest churches in town. I think they actually produced a deed where they were paid off that church in 1894 or 1896, something like that. So it is, and you can tell even though their congregation is very small, you know, when we looked at it, Councilman Williamson, there wasn't a speck of dust in the place. You could tell they take a lot of pride in that church, and would make a great venue and even a great complimentary venue to the historic colored school. But again, we don't want to get the cart before the horse as well, but it certainly is an opportunity. I think the CIP committee was interested in looking at, and I think several of you on council were interested in looking at as well.
Finley, how do they, if they still call themselves a congregation and they do not meet right now? Is that what I understand?
And I'm not sure exactly, I don't want to say that they're, you know, in hibernation or anything. I think there still is interaction on that congregation, but in terms of, you know, the regular Sunday services, particularly because they had an older congregation, they were not meeting during COVID, and so there's still interaction between the pastor and the flock.
Does that get in any kind of like murky waters with like city government getting involved with?
I think the key to that would be the conveyance. So, you know, if it is a city facility used for city purposes, be it a venue or, you know, particularly when we put restrooms in city parks for basically on the order of about $180,000. So what we're thinking is, okay, could you take something like that, have it conveyed to the city, and rather than build a restroom, take the money it would cost to build a restroom and improve that building, then maybe you would be money ahead and then have an asset as well, other than just a restroom.
Mayor, if I may, I just have I've expressed my concern to Finley as well in regards to expending money till we have a better handle on out-of-hot funds. That concerns me greatly based on the memo that he provided for us.
How about we put it on hold and address it after our
If we could do
workday?
that, I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, and what I'd like to do, if without objection, is let Reverend Majors know that there is a desire. We've got to get our ducks in a row and make sure that we have the funds necessary.
Right.
Is it possible to visit with Reverend Majors more on this and kind of fill them out on their expectations?
Sure.
I mean, that's the part I would like to understand.
I think, and again, I don't want to speak for him or his congregation, but the one scenario that was thrown out is we'd like to come and use it occasionally. Could we give it to the city just with the condition being we could use it occasionally when scheduled for service or for whatever fellowship they needed to do, so.
Well, I think I don't know who has gone to look at the church already, but it might be something that the rest of us would enjoy seeing
Absolutely.
on our work.
Absolutely. We'll try to make that happen. I'll communicate to Reverend Majors, and we'll talk about it in July.
Thanks, Finley. 7.5, a discussion and possible action regarding appointment to the Hill Country Transit Advisory Board.
Mayor, I would suggest that we appoint you as a working member of the advisory board and Bob as an alternate.
Okay.
Second.
A motion for myself and Bob as the alternate, and Chuck seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Do we have a motion to adjourn to go home?
No, executive session.
I forgot all about that, executive. So we will adjourn into executive session. Do I need a motion to do that?
Yes.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
So we will meet in executive session, section 551.086, relating to the authority of public power utility governing bodies to deliberate regarding competitive matters, utilities. 8.2, we'll adjourn after we've done that. So I will entertain a motion to,
Motion to adjourn.
Second that.
all in favor?
Aye.